Hello, everyone. So I'm John Shook, and I'd like to welcome you to this virtual Lean experience hosted by the Lean Enterprise Institute. I am with the Lean Enterprise Institute and also the Lean Global Network. I think many of you know me, many of you no doubt do not, but we'll get to know each other better today. We have an exciting kind of a pop-up session that we added to the Lean Virtual Experience, the VLX as we call it. We're going to explore something that is of great interest and of curiosity to me, which is a new thing, or new to me anyway, that has emerged that is called Lean Digital. And we've enlisted some great people to help us understand that. Some good friends of ours from CI&T, Brazilian software company, Cesar and Bruno, will be helping us out. And so just kind of get started. Again, I want to thank everyone and for joining. And I also need to, let's see, I recognize that my screen seems to be frozen. And I know this is going to make Matt Savas at LEI in Boston kind of panic as he helps me figure out what to do. I just hit escape and that did not work. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then maybe reshare and see if that helps it work a little bit better. Okay. And it's still, the slides are still not advancing. So let's see. So Matt, we may need to.
Yeah, John, why don't I take it over on my laptop, okay?
I guess we'll have to do that. So that's part of what we're learning about in this digital world. And sorry about that. This was working fine just a few moments ago. But what we're trying to do by fitting this in is really get all of our heads around what is this, this new challenge and opportunity of the digital transformation. And by including that inside the VLX, this kind of gives you an overview of where we are. We were intended to be in California, in Carlsbad, this past spring, to gather together for 2 days in person. And then instead of simply doing what many of us are doing, which is take content that was designed for an in-person physical event, the team at LEI decided to really rethink it, to blow it up, to go back to the drawing board and think of how we could take advantage of all the virtual tools to give a richer learning experience. That started a few weeks ago, September 14th, where the session with Jim Womack, Josh Howell, and Jim Morgan explored lean thinking's past, present, and future. That was followed up by a set of sessions of really deep content on developing the lean enterprise. Next week, we'll have a set of sessions similar to that about leading through the crisis that we're all living through. And then finally, designing the future. We'll think about how we can design processes, design products and services for customers and give customers what they need. And now, to think a little bit about how we're going to do this today, you will see there's a place for you to ask questions and also to vote. We're going to do a little bit of polling today. And I think by now, most of us have experience in participating in Zoom sessions, so you probably know how to do this. But I think you'll find the buttons at the bottom of your screen where you can participate. And we'd like to begin actually by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself. These things are always amazing because we have participants from all around the world. And we'd like to know a little bit about who you are. It's exciting to get to know each other, even in this limited way. We'd like, as you maybe share in the chat, where you're from, your name, where you're from, if you make digital or physical products. And then also if you have more of a lean background or a digital background, or maybe it's both. But if you could share that as we're getting started here, I think that would help us know a little bit about who we are and who's here. Because the digital storm is here. We face it every day. We're impacted by it every day. We hear about it all the time. I do, and I continue to be curious, trying to understand what it is. It's unclear to me, honestly, exactly what it is. And the issue is, what does it mean to our organizations? And perhaps even more importantly, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to each of us to live in this new world? It presents a challenge, and at the same time, it presents an opportunity. A bit of framing from me, coming at it definitely from the lean background side, not digital, not Agile Scrum. This is a graphic many of you may have seen that depicts the lean transformation framework, which is built around 5 basic pieces. Any enterprise defines, first of all, its value-driven purpose. What value are we trying to provide for customers, for society? From there, we have a pillar. We built a house here, borrowing from the Toyota metaphor, the old TPS, Toyota Production System house. Then we have process improvement. How are our processes designed? How do they work? How do we improve them? And to do that, we need the capabilities to make the process work, to do the work, to solve problems that occur, and to make improvements. Then, knowing what capabilities that we need to do the work that's required to achieve our purpose, we need a management system. A management system comprised of both the operating system, that is technically how things are supposed to work in our company, and the leadership behaviors that bring those to life, to develop capabilities so we can make the improvements to create the value. And underlying all this, we have basic thinking, this underlying mindsets. We have mindsets that are very deep, underlying assumptions, some of which we don't even know are there. So what is that, and how does that inform the way we're working within our organizations to try to create value for our customers? And this graphic, this version of this is borrowed from our good friend, Christopher Thompson at the Lean Enterprise Brazil, who in fact has spent a good bit of time with our friends at CI&T. And understanding how digital informs this. What is the role of digital? How can we understand it? Throughout the Lean Global Network, in fact, there are a number of people, well, globally, there are many people working on this. We have friends in France, certainly, in Australia, Brazil, and other places that are making progress. But I think this is a challenge that we're all facing. I don't think anyone has totally figured it out. Just to kind of show how this relates to the original house, the TPS house, I played around with applying the TP house to digitization, the TPS house to digitization. I think the overall purpose at the top, the goals are essentially the same. We want the best possible quality at the lowest possible cost with the shortest lead times. And we can do that through shortening knowledge flows, not just physical flows, but knowledge flows by eliminating waste. Then we have these pillars of just in time, which instead of themes, is simply the right information at the right time and the right amount. Not too much, not too soon, not too late. What do people need to know? Make sure we can know it when we need to know it. And then jidoka, this curious Japanese word that refers to building and getting quality built in, and also respect for humanity of the people who work in the system. It's a strange made up Japanese word. So if we simply apply this house to knowledge and information, we can just make a few changes and we can see how the old house basically could still apply. A word on this word of jidoka, many of you may know, but it is a made up Japanese word in the Japanese language. Toyota created this where they combined the notion of getting work done and human intelligence with the idea of automation. So you can call it autonomation, it's called sometimes, or automation with a human touch, or it's a merging, a blending, a harmony between humans and technology. So if we were trying to redefine that concept in today's world, we call it Jidoka 2020. And Lisa Yerian of the Cleveland Clinic and I will explore this in more detail next Monday and how that applies to the healthcare world in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. Jidoka is one of the very first Toyota concepts. It was dated from a patent in the early 1900s, over 100 years old, and it concerned harmony between humans and technology, even in those early days of technology. So this was incredibly prescient. As applied to digitization, I believe Jidoka holds that all data should be valuable, which means accurate and needed, not just random data. As applied to any new technology, Jidoka holds that technology, automation, digitization, IT should serve humans, not the other way around, which in my experience over many years, often proves to be the case. Applied to the design then of any work, any kind of work, Jidoka holds that human work should not be tied to technology. We want to separate that. And it should be enhanced by technology. And that relates to this very deep concept of how we think about work, which is that each person should be the owner of the outcome of his or her work. So this is the way this looks on an assembly line, the famous example of a worker doing work and pulling the rope, asking for help. I won't go into this in great detail right now, but you'll have access to these materials even going forward. But here's another version, the exact same words. We want to balance the social and technical dimensions of work, but now not just in a factory, but when we're doing work in any kind of office setting for knowledge work as well. We'd like for production, that is work, to stop for any kind of abnormality. So each person owns the quality outcome of their work. The human work separated from technology so that we have an enabling technical structure. Technology working for people, not the other way around, and support and assistance readily available. So we need enabling organizational structures with supporting relationships. Ultimately, and this is what I'll be thinking about today as we hear from Cesar and Bruno, I think we're doing PDCA, but we're trying to do it very quickly at the right pace. And sometimes that means the pace is faster than when PDCA was first conceptualized over half a century ago. And I think we'll hear how CI&T has learned so much about over the years. This is someone, I don't really know him, but I guess he's famous in the kind of the digital world. I guess he was the founder of Waze. And he has this t-shirt that I love. And our friend Art Smalley from the Lean World wears the same t-shirt. Now, this is a common connection, I think, between Lean worlds and the digital world, which is we want to fall in love with the problem, not the solution, because the solution will change with each circumstance. So now I'd like to introduce and turn it over to my friends, Cesar, Bruno, and Bob Wollheim, who will kind of host the session from CI&T, where they will share their learning over the years as they've been keeping up with the growth, keeping pace with the technology changes and the changing needs of customers. And as they have presented the question for us today, how should successful companies react to the digital storm that is just beginning? And with that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Thank you, John. We're very honored to be here. I'm Bob Wollheim. I'm CSO at CI&T. And my role here is to moderate the final Q&A with all you guys. But before we go there, so I would invite you guys to prepare your questions and your provocations, your comments. Let's make it a very interactive moment at the end of the Cesar's and Bruno presentation. And I'm impressed with people from everywhere: US, Singapore, Mexico, Brazil, Canada, Zambia, Dubai, India, Peru, and Italy, and these are only the ones that chatted, said some message in the chat where they came from. Very impressed with the global audience we have here today. So with no further ado, Cesar and Bruno, co-founders of CI&T, it's all with you guys.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. It's always an honor to participate in an event with John and the whole Lean team. Lean has been instrumental in our story, has been a key component of our culture and our success. So we owe so much to their ideas. And we're here today to actually to share with you a little bit of where we're taking some of those ideas that we learned a long time ago. But before we start, let's learn a little bit about the audience here and learn about you guys there. So Matt, run the poll. Really wanted to learn a little bit about your background, so we kind of make the content here a little more relevant for you, right? So if you can just answer the polls there. Let's give like 15 seconds to people to answer the first poll. We have a couple of questions for you, so please go ahead and just pick one to understand from you your experience with digital, and also, okay, moderate and good. Okay, that's nice to hear. So now we wanted to understand the next question is about your familiarity with Lean itself, right? So just so we understand the vernacular here we can use with you guys, and then just give a couple of seconds for people to respond, Matt. Think we're good? Easy question or an easy answer. Okay, good. So probably more heavy on the Lean side than the digital side. And last question, just before we start here, is about your involvement with the digital transformations within your companies, right? So how involved are we in those initiatives? Like, just so we have an idea. Good to go. Okay. A lot more than a little. Okay, good. Cool, good stuff. So with no further ado, so let us explain a little bit of what we're trying to cover here today. What's our view of what's Lean applied to digital? It's a nascent discipline, so it's certainly something that we invite you all to join and contribute to this new book of knowledge. But this is what we learned during the many years that we've been playing this space. Right? So, as I mentioned before, CI&T started in 1995. It's one of the pioneers in the internet industry. We started by helping clients to understand what the web and the internet was, and since then trying to help them understand what the potentials and business opportunities that were there for them, and helping them reconfigure their technology, their processes, and sometimes even their culture to adapt to this new world. Right? So for us, it's been a great journey of learning. So we have to change ourselves many times during this journey. We started one of the biggest changes for us was starting doing Agile, which was one of the key disciplines in this world in 2006. And that led us to Lean. That was the gate to Lean. When we kind of needed, we certainly needed a more comprehensive discipline to scale Agile and have a broader vision on what the value creation for Agile was. So then when we started our own Lean transformation was in 2010 when we got involved with the Lean Institute in Brazil. Then we run our first Hoshin Camry and start ourselves, the senior leadership of the company, trying to learn Lean, and did our first A3s and really went through the process of transforming ourselves as Lean leaders and being a bigger reference for our people, right? So it started a slow transformation that quite frankly took 4 to 5 years. So we kind of when we were kind of ready to adapt those learnings to our offering and trying to teach our clients, right? So there's been a growth journey, as you see there. It's a company that reached 200 million people, and it's expanded globally. It has an international footprint now, operating in all continents. It's 3,000 people, which for us has a special taste. We started, Cesar and I and another partner. We were 3, barely out of college in 1995, and just to reach 3,000, it's always a special thing for us. So this is where we are, and we serve usually global organizations that are complex and for whom digital is important, right? So you see there. The most common industries that we serve is financial services, retail, consumer goods, insurance, those industries, media, those industries where digital is really important, right? So it's critical for their survival, and we have learned everything we learn in the field with those companies and trying to apply those ideas and impact their business. So that's a little bit about us. So enough about us. Let's move on to the topic, just so you understand where we're coming from and our ideas, where they were actually tested, and a little bit of our background, so you understand where we're coming from. With that, Cesar, please take us from here.
Thanks, Bruno. So the idea here is to talk about the digital store and its impact on strategic thinking and leadership. More specifically, the question we would like to address with you today is how should successful companies react to the digital store? And in addition to this, I would say, corporate perspective, we would like to discuss a more individual perspective too. So an additional question would be, how should you as a professional react to the digital store? So basically the storyline here is first to introduce a few concepts or a vocabulary about strategy and leadership. And then we are going to ground it using two concrete examples of applying what we are calling lean digital in two organizations, a global CPG company and a large retailer. At the end of this panel, we would like you to understand what is lean digital, why it's important, and how to learn more, how to dig in this concept, if you will. So first, let's start with vocabulary for strategy. At the turn of the 20th century, the first academic models emerged to discuss innovation and growth. That was the moment where Christensen from Harvard introduced the disruptive innovation concept in his seminal book, The Innovator's Dilemma, in 1997, right? Almost at the same time, really 2 years later, 1999, a set of authors published a book named The Alchemy of Growth, introducing the three horizons model. That was a simple way to explain the idea that companies need to execute the current business while at the same time creating new capabilities. The three horizons provide an incredible, simple, but powerful vocabulary or taxonomy. The model describes innovation and growth occurring in three horizons, in time horizons. The horizon one would be basically continuous improvement inside the company's core business. Horizon two focuses on opportunities to expand the existing business to new customer markets, targets in adjacence of the current business. And horizon three is the creation of disruptive, viable options for the future. It can be based on taking advantage of disruptive opportunities from technology, for example, or to counter aggressive disruption from competitors. The original idea was that each horizon requires a different set of tools, practice, processes, goals, and so on. So according to the specific interest or market dynamic, the company would allocate its resource to Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3 initiatives. For example, 2 decades ago, typical numbers were like 70 to 80% on Horizon 1, expecting short-term or same-year results, 10 to 20% on Horizon 2 initiatives, expecting a timeline of 2 to 5 years, and 5% at most in Horizon 3, expecting options to flourish in a region from 5 to 10 years. Yes, 2 decades ago, people talk about 10 years horizon. And a simple way to classify initiatives is in terms of number of simultaneous risks. For example, if you are taking market risks, does it solve a customer need? Are you taking technology risk? Is it technically feasible? Are you taking business model risk? Do you have a financially feasible engine for growth? So being very simplistic, if you are taking none of these risks, you are working on Horizon 1. If you are taking the 3 risks, it's Horizon 3. And if, of course, if you are taking 1 or 2 of these risks, it's Horizon 2. So time has shown that there's a flaw in this model. The x-axis is not time. It's better when we see it as level of uncertainty. So it's a serious flaw because we have a huge set of technological and methodological possibilities to deal with uncertainty. And because of the drastic reduction in cost of computing, data handling, the advent of social media and other radical changes in the society behavior, we can say that it's a strategic imperative for big companies to play Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 in a completely different fashion. And in terms of methodology, Horizon 1 is the land of the mature land of the last century approach for operational excellence, like, of course, the Toyota production system and the classic lean management, total quality management, Six Sigma, and so on. Very mature ways to address efficiency. But the advent of disciplines approach for Horizon 3 is much more recent, and we can say it's much more immature, and was created mostly around the startup ecosystem, like Silicon Valley, for example, and can be represented by the works of Eric Rice, the lean startups, and Steve Blank with the customer development methodology. Finally, my personal perspective, there's a gap of approaches for Horizon 2. If you try to use a Horizon 1 approach to Horizon 2, it will be like to fit the square peg in the round hole. On the other hand, if you attempt to apply Horizon 3, the startup approach, to Horizon 2 of a large, complex organization, it's gonna be very naive. So but why Horizon 2 is important? Why Horizon 2 is very important? The idea is try to illustrate that here. Well, traditionally, if we follow the industrial-centric pattern, companies first became big corporates empires by excelling on handling quality, productivity, supply, distribution. Everything is about complexity at a scale. And only after that fight, companies pay attention and energy and resource to funding innovation on Horizon 2 and 3 spaces. But if you look at the digital iconic companies like Netflix, Airbnb, and Uber, it's easy to note that probably for the first time in history, these companies become dominant, focused almost exclusively on Horizon 2 strategies. Now let's move our eyes to the emblematic auto industry. It was a kind of a symbolic milestone, not only symbolic, but painful if you are a lean lover like me. Just a few weeks ago, July 1st, Tesla reached a market capitalization of more than 200 billion, surpassing the iconic Toyota to become the most valuable automaker in the world and history. From July 1st to today, it's almost double the market capital. But really, how can that be possible if this company is struggling to produce only 400,000 cars a year? So if you look Tesla, they haven't mastered the car factory business yet. Just as a comparison, Toyota produced more than 10 million high-quality cars a year in a flawless production line. That's 25 more than Tesla. But according to some industry experts, a lot of industry experts, Tesla is more connected to the consumers. It resonates as a lifestyle, as a company with a purpose, more aligned with the environmental ambitions of the society, as a clean energy promoter. And we all know that Tesla is organically and uniquely linked to consumer data. So it may be a safety linked to the uncertainty of the future of this industry. So now let's take a look at the digital gorillas, Amazon, Google, and Apple. These companies are Horizon 2 machines. Amazon and Google, only after they became market cap monsters, both start to invest heavily in Horizon 3 strategies, specifically Google with the Alphabet Ventures. It's really incredible that these powerhouses are not facing any real Horizon 1 complexity right now. Maybe only Apple is a strange animal in this jungle, It's clear on a Horizon 2 machine, but also balancing it with an amazing innovator mindset, with a flawless Horizon 1 player in large-scale hardware production, and also an iconic distribution and retail stores. So Apple is one of a kind for sure. And finally, it's happening all around the world, not only in the US. For example, we are watching the same battle for the banking industry in Brazil, the traditional banking industry in Brazil. It's a kind of exemplary scenario where we can see the once invincible incumbents, large banks like Itaú, Bradesco, being seriously threatened by unicorn fintechs like XP and Nubank. And the next, the incumbents are Horizon 1 giants, of course, and the challenges are Horizon 2 machines. So let's wait for the next chapter of this battle. In Brazil, we call it the battle of the yellow vests. You can Google why. So I mentioned we saw Horizon 2 gap as an opportunity, and we really specialize CI&T in the Horizon 2 business space. And I would say that what we are discussing here is the result of more than 2 decades facing the challenges of what we call lean digital. That's really a combination of the disruption of digital in terms of aggressively using tech, data, design, with the discipline and the leadership frame of mind of lean. And by the way, we just published a book in the beginning of this year, Faster, Faster, The Dawn of Lean Digital, where we present our learnings in this journey, connecting the dots of lean and digital. And it's based not only on CI&T experience and perspective, but also including the journeys of some of our clients like Itaú and other Coca-Cola and other large companies. So let me double click a little on lean digital and try to give you what we learn. Basically, we learned that a sustainable transformation in a traditional, large, complex organization will demand basically 3 major redesign. The first one is the most visible one. You need to radically change the way you design, you build, and you evolve your digital experience. The way you create digital products, platforms, the way you handle data. It's of course about squads, agile, DevOps, design think, microservices, cloud, machine learning, and a never-ending list of methods and technologies. But the other 2 redesigns are much less visible and maybe much less glorious, but equally important. The second thing we need to do is to redesign the management system, meaning the way we do planning, budgeting, incentives, reporting, and reviewing of activities. It means to create a management system focused on connecting strategy and business output to the daily work of the squads, of the multifunctional teams. And finally, the third redesign, and probably the most difficult one, is to promote a new approach for leadership development. Is to foster behavior change in the way senior management happens at the company. And to be frank, it's quite impossible to leverage innovation and agility using the classical command and control leadership style. So the new leadership model is the concrete foundation for the advent of this new culture, more innovative, more fast, leaving the slow by design mode in the past. So, in an effort to summarize what's really core for a consistent corporate change, aiming business agility and Horizon 2 mastery, I would say, I select 4, I would say, negotiable pillars. And the first one is kind of obvious. It's customer centricity. This is the foundation of a design system and a decision system that prioritize customer needs. Are you really spending more time on digging customer needs than on your P&L? So, important questions. The second is the ability to organize real small, autonomous, multifunctional teams. It's ineffective if your squads are operating within departments. It's also very ineffective if your teams are too big and full of part-time people. And the squads need real autonomy. So senior leadership really trusts the most important decisions to be made by the team. And the third is the culture of moonshot, or the 10x, or the 10 times. To be comfortable aiming for very audacious, very aggressive goals. But the radical difference is goals that are set bottom up by the teams, not top down from the CEO or top leadership. And the last but not least is the culture of experimentation, meaning create an organization focused on learning, on testing, a lot of things to discover what really works. So if we go to my favorite subject, really, the perspective for the leaders is the most radical one. I think this is the radical need for change. And I believe this is the critical path or the bottleneck for the speed of the change, of the transformation, if you will. And going straight to the point, I think the problem is us, leaders, managers, executives, with very successful careers in the corporate world. Probably we achieve our success using the leadership model that prevailed in the industrial century, in the last century. That was based on being in control, knowing the answers, and maybe most important, not make mistakes. As I mentioned, it's hard to leverage innovation and agility using this classical command and control style. Instead, to play in the digital jungle, we need leaders that inspire by translating strategy into purpose, leaders that foster obsessive learning mindset, and also create an environment for experimentation, for risks, and of course, for mistakes. And I always mention that no one will sleep as a classic command and control boss on Friday and wake up magically as a collaborative and inspired leader on Monday. It should be seen as a personal journey of learning a new set of practice that will gradually replace the old leadership habits. And it's important to talk about culture. And I stopped counting, but I believe that in the last 3 years, I've talked to more than 300 CEOs, and every single one of them highlight that digital transformation is about culture. And I also believe so. But what I learned from my mistakes, from our mistakes, was that you can read on our scars, really, that culture is not a good starting point for change. It's too abstract, intangible, interpretative, too right-brained. What really worked was surprise. Now, not such a surprise, but at the beginning, was we need to prioritize impact. More specifically, we need to discover ways to generate business results like revenue, EBITDA, in very short cycles. As a quarter, for example, in 3 months. It's a very powerful way to drive the change in the CEO and top leadership. It's a powerful way to connect the logic and the intuition. So when doing things using a completely different set of concepts, practice, tools, will show better results. The senior leadership will embrace it. And as a reaction, the culture will evolve. So, and each step toward a faster and a more innovative culture will improve the business impact potential. And this is the amazing flywheel of the digital revolution. So driven by impact and having culture change as a byproduct. So I mentioned about speed. So how to generate impact in very short time. I think one equation or a simple way to see that is to combine 3 groups of disciplines or competence, if you will, meaning strategy, design, and engineering, specifically software engineering, in what we call in the lean terminology, one-piece flow. So it's also a way to stop seeing the company as 2 hierarchical set of people, one special elite in charge of strategy and another set of people in charge of execution. this division can work for Horizon 1 operation, but it's a disaster for playing the Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 battlefield. So as I promised, now it's time to put some meat on the bone. So I will briefly deep dive in 2 impact cases applying Lean Digital by 2 large companies, Centauro and Coca-Cola. So the first one is about is how to help Centauro. Centauro is the largest sporting goods retailer in Latin America. How we could help them to create new avenues for growth using Lean Digital. We joined Centauro through the CEO, Pedro Zemel, shortly after the IPO last year. And the idea was to help them to find new levers for growth. The Horizon 1 strategy was very clear and mature. It's just continue to open new physical stores in large malls. That was what Centauro was doing for 3 or 4 decades. So the challenge was to find digital strategies to over-deliver growth, really basically design Horizon 2 hypotheses that could at least double the Centauro's growth rate in the following years. That was the true north for this program. So the true north was set, and we used just 1 week dynamic, we call strategic mapping, to set the true north and to find a set of candidates for that. And the output is a list of about 10 different opportunities. And then we selected 3 of them, basically, of course, on ballpark potential impact, but also using criteria like assertiveness, feasibility, and competence learning. That was a priority. So we select 3 opportunities that were in mall, basically converting physical customer into digital ones. The second was about designing a kind of lightweight phygital stores outside malls and big centers. The third hypothesis was around creating new strategies focused on soccer fans or football fans like me. And after that, we picked the first hypothesis, the e-mall hypothesis, and start what we call the Discover A3, using the Lean terminology. It's a 4-week hands-on investigation on product fit, customer data, consumer experience tests, and so on. Of course, and the technology analysis to raise restrictions and possibilities. And the output can be a no-go in the sense of fail fast, or a more assertive business case where concrete impact figures can be forecast. So, and we decide to move with e-mall. So basically, the idea was converting part of the 8 million customer of Centauro's physical stores into phygital customers. That is, customers who continue to go to the stores, to the beautiful Centauro store, but also buy via e-commerce. So the digital platform would be a combination of a seller app for frictionless consumer identification and a human plus artificial intelligence WhatsApp platform to keep a conversational channel between the customer and the seller. And we execute that by a sequence of 9 days cycles of impact. And the first cycle was just about an MVP running only on 2 stores with only 20 sellers, calibrating the experience, the product, the market fit. And then the second cycle was about extending that results to 20 stores and 180 sellers, learning more, expanding the coverage, the level of intelligence and automation of the platform. And then finally, the third cycle, we were ready to totally focus on scale it to the more than 200 stores. So that was the cycle of discover and then scale what we learned. And the success and learnings of this first empowered Centauro's executives to play a more aggressively a role in the digital space. So just after the 2 first cycle, we start to explore the other two avenues for growth, as I mentioned before. And what I think is much more important is that I think the quality of the strategic thinking of the Centauro's executive in terms of digital improved a lot. And now they are raising ideas and strategies that are even more powerful than that initial set of hypotheses. And I see that they are now very comfortable in connecting the dots of social commerce, trust generated by internet influence, personal advisory, one-click fulfillment, and so on. So it's the learn by doing from Lean, happening and expanding the possibilities of Centauros to be a more digital or a more aggressively Horizon 2 player. And then Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, of course, is a well-known company. It's a global kind of CI&T for more than 2 decades now. And we have dozens of initiatives with them. But I select one that I believe is very emblematic. It's part of an innovation program they call Coca-Cola Moonshot that is focused on leveraging results through digital. And the opportunity here was selected by Enrique, the CEO of Coca-Cola Latin America. He selected the fragmented retailers as an opportunity. The huge number of very small business that represents 7% of Coca-Cola business in Brazil. We are talking about small merchants, bakers, bars, small restaurants, and so on. So the approach was quite similar to Centauro. First, we deep dive into pains of the small business owners, of the consumers in this case, mapping 91 opportunities, and then prioritize a few ones which would be strong levers of engagement, like 24/7 order entry, quick fix of cooler issues, delivery tracking, payments, and so on. So, and it was also easy to identify during the discovery, again, that the best platform to really communicate with this audience would be, again, WhatsApp. And we designed and launched the KO Boss. It's a chat box focused on being a very simple and intuitive platform. The idea is to really focus on addressing many of the most relevant pains of these small business owners. And it took around 6 months of experiments and intense learning or mistakes to find the right spot for engagement. And just after that, we start a sequence of 9 cycles for scaling the adoption, and then keeping adding new pain removers to the platform. And so after the experiment showed to be a success, we start to scale this up to the whole Coca-Cola system in Brazil. So, and we already have most of the franchises, or the bottlers, as they call, onboarded, and over 300,000 consumers with access to the chat box, with a very high client satisfaction, and also the most relevant business KPIs like volume, revenue, items per share, strike rate, and so on, showing very good results. So the performance of this solution in Brazil start to influence other Coca-Cola business units in different regions, especially Latin America. So chatbox now is one of the main topics in the digital agenda across the region. So just as a side note, there are several other programs with Coca-Cola globally, including the USA and China. And I think interesting to note that how different the initiatives are prioritized in each regions. And there's just a few that are really global. It's more local consumer connection business than a global perspective. It's the kind and the nature of initiatives vary a lot from region to market from market. So we have been applying the same umbrella of lean digital math in different countries, industries, and I would say that we have very consistent results. So so the idea here is now Bruno, back to Bruno, he will dig a little on competence or the gap of competence to play what we are calling lean digital, or to connect the dots of lean with digital. Bruno.
So Cesar spoke a lot about the enterprise skills and competencies that we need to have. Our exercise here is just kind of trying to apply, what does it mean for the individuals, right? So what do you mean, for example, if you're a lean practitioner and wants to get into this game of digital transformation, right? With most of the majority of years already have some involvement, right? So what we think we can leverage, right? So with a lean knowledge into this digital transformation programs. Right? So with our experience, like we've looked back at the 4 pillars presented there and the big shift in leadership style, right? So that what we think a lean practitioner can bring to the table, which is of critical value, right? So it's the list there. So most important is the leadership transformation, right? So partnering with HR, partnering with other departments to actually be that example of the new leadership, right? That is needed in this environment. As Cesar said, it's more this new leadership style. It's super aligned with the lean leadership. The learning mindset, right? So the finding what the problem is and trying to solve it. So it's very aligned in terms of leadership. And I think a lean practitioner can bring a lot to the table as being part of that role model for reference, right? for the last century managers. The other great contribution that we have experienced is some value stream mapping and more of a system thinking the lean thinkers bring to the table, right? So if you go and talk to the IT people that are running agile, and ask them what their lead time is, well, they would tell you, well, we're super fast here. We're running all 2-week lead time, right? We're 4 weeks most lead time, right? But I think what usually there's a lack of vision what the overall lead time and the lead time that we usually run with our clients, and we run doses and doses of time. It's the value stream from idea inception, when that idea of that new digital platform or digital product was conceived, to the very end of the line. So when actually that was the first time that product reached their customers' hands, right? So that if it was a platform, when that actually was launched and it started being used, right? In our experience, and we did this again, tens and tens of times, that lead time average from 2 years to 2.5 years. That's the average that we found. Again, complex organizations as the ones we mentioned here, but it's very long, right? So, and sometimes we have an IT team inside of this very long lead time that starts with someone pitching an idea to the board, building a 60-page business case, and approving it and reviewing it with 14 different departments that have to sign off on that plan, right? So when we measure all this, it's in the middle, you may have an IT team that's doing 2-week sprints there, but it doesn't change the lead time. That is still 2 years, right? So that's a provocation that you as a lean practitioner can make, right? So just ask, what is the lead time from that idea was first conceived and when it's going to hit the market, right? So, and I think that system thinking in ability to coordinate and run a session just to find out what the mapping of the value stream is, and sharing with everybody, because everybody's kind of operating in silos and they don't have an idea. That's our experience, that nobody has an idea of the complete lead time, and when they see it, you can mobilize for change. That's one critical part that you can play. The other is just applying, helping on the strategy deployment, as Cesar said. Like, so I think that with the lean thinking and practices have a very powerful way to integrate management from strategic goals all the way to operational goals, and kind of making that PDCA synchronizations in alignment, right? It's very valuable here in an environment where direction changes very fast, right? So strategies, because there's a lot of volatility and uncertainty, and customers are changing behavior, and the products and the digital strategy at least have to change and pivot very fast. That is even more critical. And that type of thinking and contribution, it's very much valuable. The other one is using A3, the A3 thinking and the A3 tool as a foundation for the experimentation, right? So we're using the experimentation, rapid experimentation, as part of the learning process. But if you don't have a structure there, right, so you don't instrumentalize that and make it a discipline, right? It can just grow chaotic, mostly when you're talking about big organizations and big teams, right? So we have found that just instrumentalizing it with A3, it's a way to kind of to really scale that as a competence inside a company that is really really beneficial for the company, and that can be sparked by a lean thinker. Right? And the last one that we brought here for as a provocation is the passion for the problem that John mentioned in the beginning, right? So like not be distracted by technology just for the sake of technology, right? So it's be really trying to understand what the problem, the pains of your clients and customers are, and really be focused on that, and using technology as a lever, as an enabler to solve that problem, and not the other way around. Not just join the bandwagon of machine learning just because everybody's doing it, and let's do this just because we get to know this because this may bring an advantage for us. Right? So that's a temptation that happens unfortunately too often in this world. So this is what professionals can bring to the table, lean professionals, right? So that's very valuable in our experiences. We ourselves use this a lot. Right? So coming from our own lean transformation, bringing this to the digital arena, we use this a lot. But also there are challenges, right? So there are challenges that we see in typical lean professionals. So what are the leap, or what are the jump that they have to make to become a more complete professional in this new environment? Cesar, if you can click there, the last one. So the challenge that we see that lean professionals have to learn, have to acquire to be a big player in this game, right? It starts with tech. It's a big challenge, right? So there's an endless list of technologies that need to be learned. You don't need to learn technology and to be a software person, but you need to understand the basics of it. Right? You need to understand, the basics of cloud, the basics of DevOps, which is the continuous. This is the one-piece flow for software. Right, the basics of data and the new use of data through machine learning and artificial intelligence. Right? So just the basics to understand the potential of those things, right? And those things bring the potential to do things in an exponential way, as Cesar told, right? So like one of the critical things around digital is this: you can reach global scale very fast, right? So, and very cheap, right? So because digital the cost of the technology is very, very, very affordable, you can build things that have global reach, digital products that have global reach, very cheap and very fast, right? Even as Cesar explained, even kind of crashing the concept of time as a constraint, right? So that's important that the teams pursue that exponential mindset and audacious goals. because it's possible, because it's when you find something, mainly when you're talking about outside of your doors, right? So it's the potential to capture and try to digitize the relationship outside your doors. Let's say a classical example is chatbots, for example, right? So if you can digitize the conversation, the interaction with your clients, the questions that your clients are asking, or consumers are asking of your company, right? If that doesn't have, that can be digitized, there's no scale that can reach, right? So that immediately serving that need of answering consumers' questions, just the cost of that goes to almost zero, and the scale goes to almost infinity, right? So that's the potential that digitizing some of those relations and some of those tasks they have. And so that's the exponential thinking that we're bringing here, and we encourage the teams to think exponentially because the potential is exponential. So when you're setting goals and looking for opportunities, you have to have that mindset. But the other thing is, as we call collaboration steroids, right? And the background there is that the customer value, right? So for lean, we usually use the customer value as an input for our process, right? So we design all the process, considering that we know what the value is for our clients, right? And then we design the processes and everything to deliver that value. The thing in this new digital world is that customer value is always moving, is a moving target, right? So that's the challenge. So we have to establish a disciplined process to always be finding and discovering customer value, and the ability to respond to that new value and to experiment, as we mentioned before, right? So to try to find what the new value is, and when we find it, ability to respond and scale those initiatives very fast, right? So that requires an ability to collaborate across functions in finding and connecting to the external client or customer in a different way. And there's tools that need to be developed and learned that help on that. Like design thinking is a critical one, right? So to kind of having that human empathy that we have for in the lean world, we have with our own workers, right? We have to reflect that to outside, to have that same process happening to the outside world, to actually have a Gemba, move the Gemba from inside to outside your doors, right? So to take a look at how the users, how the consumers are actually using your digital experiences, like how actually they observe, they're having that the go and see approach with the way they're actually using your products, what the pains they're going through, what they're not learning, what they're not understanding about the products you have, and observe that, and then react fast with improvements. Right? So that's the most important. And last but not least is it's coming from to tackle that uncertainty. Most of the time you have to have many ideas going, right? So something that's not total strange to the lean community, that's the lean product development, for example, is familiar with. It's kind of an open set base or multiple options to solve a problem, right? But with that also comes in what we call idea detachment here. It's to be really ruthless with killing the ideas that don't show progress, right? And again, in this world, it's very easy to test ideas. In the digital world, in a couple of weeks, you can test something. You can build something and have what we call an MVP, and just launch something and see if there's a response. If there's not, well, you just have to retire that idea, right? So you have to be really, detached from the ideas, because you have to have hundreds of them to find one that's really valuable. So it's what we call the venture capital mindset with your own ideas. So that's what we think is the overall leap, right? Again, this is just the wrap up here. This is just our learnings, our ideas, but we think that everybody here, if you're in that journey, You have to go through, put them to work and execute and go through your own learnings. It's a new book of knowledge. It's our reality, but we understand it may be theory for you that is listening to them. So the real knowledge comes out of just doing this by yourselves. And just as a reference, if you want to learn more, it's a couple of references here in many different disciplines. Our favorite lean books, disciplines as design, which is very important, design thinking. Our favorite leadership books, from John Shook's Managing to Learn to some more futuristic ones like Gary Hamel. So How to Change Culture. So those are kind of the books that influenced our thinking, and we're happy to recommend as a further reference to you guys. Other than that, we also, as Cesar mentioned, we kind of put our collection of ideas and stories in this book called Faster, which is free and digital. Couldn't be different. So you have the URL there. And also we have blogs and other supporting materials that you can use. They're all free and open on our website that you can take and try to leverage. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and happy to continue the conversation here over Q&A.
Good, excellent. Thank you, Bruno and Cesar. Let me start my video here. So we have a few questions already. I will start presenting them to you guys, but I would like to invite John with the honor to get started here with the first question. John, I assume you have a good question, so you have the honor to get started.
Well, I don't know if it's a good question, but you did guess right. I do have some questions. And full disclosure, I know you guys pretty well. I visited you at your offices in Brazil, and it's just mind-blowing or mind-opening for me at that time. Cesar, we first met over 10 years ago. So I know something about your journey, but I'm still trying to figure this out. So I learned a lot today. I guess one thing that occurs to me to ask is the very last slide, Bruno, that you showed. In fact, it was on my mind, actually. You said ideas are precious, execution is everything. And the slide before that, you told us that, on the technology side, we need to think in terms of 10x faster. In fact, that's the name of your book. I'd like to remind everyone that in case you missed it, it's a great book. I learned a lot from it. And it is available to people listening today free. You can go to the CI&T site or maybe LEI will make it available. But anyway, you can download it and learn the CI&T story and a lot more about these concepts. But in this slide, so 10 it faster and faster. But your last words in your presentation were execution is everything. Have you found a conflict or a tension or a trade-off between going 10 times faster than being able to execute in a solid, predictable way? So how can we think about that?
I think what we're proposing here is actually a new discipline of execution. That's I think is the very point, right? So when we think about, I think we think about innovation and disruption as a inspiration thing, and not a perspiration thing, as Thomas Edison would say, right? So and as Thomas Edison said, it's just 1% of the game, right? So, and I think too much discussion and what people write is about the 1% inspiration. I take it as Cesar said, it's very hard. Because it's very hard, it's a very, very, very critical problem, because the culture that is the culture of this 20th century doesn't allow for that 1% to flourish. But what we're talking about here is less of that's very important. But to have a discipline of execution, it's different. Instead of leading, the leading with two big ideas. That's how companies operate today, right? So they have the ideas on the board level, right? There's a beauty contest of ideas for innovation, right? And They're fully funded, so that you fund two $20 million ideas, right? And then you run a very slow and expensive process trying to make them happen. Usually halfway, you already learned that they are not going to fly, and you still keep going as a zombie, going through your company, right? What we're proposing here is a completely different model, where we have to start with 200 ideas and let the market decide what's going to fly. So it's a different way to execute.
So Bob, could I just a little follow-up? So one of the big ideas companies, executives always have is simply to go faster. And so they say, let's go faster, but they don't have the ability to do that, to execute that. So again, the interplay between the two, I guess, becomes an important thing.
Cesar, do you want to add something there?
Just adding that what we see, of course, in the last 5 years, every single company start his digital transformation program. And immediately we see a lot of excitement about technology, about creating new things and so on. But if you look 6 months later from the big launch, or 1 year later, is a clear lack of discipline execution. So that's why we provoke. It's less about big, very insightful ideas, and more about the discipline. By the way, this is one of the plays of Lean in this digital revolution, to organize and to avoid the mass stack. Just add more digital platforms and possibilities, then things will be solved. It's not true. So
Bob, could I just say one more before we turn it for you?
Sure.
Questions from the audience. I know that there's several.
Sure. Go ahead, John.
Again, it relates to this question of lean and digital, because some things are starting to make sense to me. Again, back to that next to the last slide that show, or maybe it was one before, but you show the technical changes, and then also the collaboration on steroids. So one thing that is beginning to occur to me more and more, that perhaps the adding of digital could simply make it almost impossible not to embrace some of the changes that we wanted in organizations already. For example, command and control. With 10X, with the close connection with companies, doing co-creation with companies, as you described, you can no longer just do lip service to doing away with command and control. It actually forces that. It could be a forcing mechanism, so that we can bring about a lot of the social changes, the leadership changes that we've been wanting in lean transformations all along. So again, perhaps that's a good place for a marriage between the two.
Oh yes, totally. Because the main change that needs to happen, and Cesar said well, like if you're a senior executive today, it's because you were very good at command and control, very good at knowing the answers, right? And we experienced this firsthand in the digital. You can't, you do focus groups, you do surveys and asking people what they want. People don't know what they want. You have to build something and put them in their hands, and then you're going to observe if that works or not. Because ask McDonald's people what people tell them what they want, healthy food and stuff. But do what they want and see what happens, right? Do what they say that they want, right? So in the digital side, digital world, mainly when we're talking about purchase decisions, it's very hard to. So the tools that we had in the past, they don't work, right? So it's easier to convince executives, and at least on the digital front, that we don't know exactly what's going to work, that we have to take a more humble approach, and that we have to find ways to discover where value is, right? So it's easier, and hopefully those lessons will resonate in a world that's more and more uncertain, right? So mainly with the pandemic, we're seeing that uncertainty and unpredictability spread out in other industries and other areas, right? So hopefully that influence of digital and unfortunately with the pandemic, I think people will be more aware that we have to take a more humble position, that we don't know the answers. We actually have to find them outside our doors.
Good. So let's give some voice for our audience here. Tim Kostelnik, the most voted question. I have started using process mining in combination with value stream mapping to get a true depiction of digital current state and combining with the human reaction of what stakeholders feel are the issue in the current state. Do any of you have experience in using process mining tools to capture what is happening in a process digitally with traditional value stream mapping methods? So we don't need to have the three of you responding. So someone raises the hand and choose the question.
Take it, Cesar.
I can yes. I think, again, to translate the tools of Lean to these digital challenges, you need to be less attached to the tools and more attached to the concept that are behind these tools. So I think value stream mapping is an amazing tool, especially if you use that for customer journey, for mapping pains, for understanding lead times, but not in the perspective of operational excellence. That is the traditional use of this concept, but in the sense of what's happening outside of the company. So, and then data is the food to be really smart about. Of course, you need to co-create, you need to get perspective, design perspective, but you need to ground it with data. So I think it's a powerful combination, all the concept behind the value stream mapping, but I would say powered by data, by real aggressively prove what's really happening with data. I think it's a good path, an amazing combination, an amazing instantiation of the value stream mapping concept.
Bob,
Okay, good, thank you.
Could I add one thing, Bob?
You can do it whatever you want, John.
I can do whatever you want, but it's interesting. I'm going to go back to when we introduced value stream mapping 22 years ago. And probably everyone joining today knows value stream map. You've done value stream maps. I remind you that the bottom of the process box, right? There's what we call a data box. Now, the way we always taught and recommend using the data box is the bottom of it. It's not a box. It's open-ended at the bottom, intentionally. And people would always ask, what's the exact standard and data to put in there? And we always said, it depends on what you need to learn. So from the very beginning, the process box and data box and value stream mapping was an invitation to what has now become process mining, which I think is a great thing. So they go absolutely hand in glove.
Good, thank you, John. Shitaranjan Maitre, sorry if I didn't say it correctly. What is the relationship of digital lean with Industry 4.0?
Take that one. So I encourage you guys to think about digital and digital transformation as the broad spectrum of technologies that can help operational efficiency, customer relations, the use of data to create even new business models. Right? So I think digital is broader, right, than Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0, I understand, and I'm sorry, I'm not an expert in industry and all the robotics that go inside a manufacturing plant. So, but I understand, like it's the Industry 4.0 is the application of all those new digital technologies to the plant floor and the environment, right? So it's an internal look of technologies in the manufacturing plant, right? So where we're thinking digital, it's everything, right? It's outside your doors. It's how you actually kind of leveraging data in the relationships that you establish for clients and how you kind of creating new business models out of that and new ways of go-to-market, right? So it's everything. So that's thank you for the question a bit and the chance to clarify.
If I can add, as
sure,
connecting with the idea of collaboration, we discuss collaboration in terms of internally or with the customer. But if you think about that, we are just in the beginning of an era where companies will need to interconnect in a radically different way, comparing to the status quo. It's not about organizing a value chain or a distribution channel. It's about really creating integrated experience for the customer. And this experience means companies will need to collaborate, or the platforms that are behind the companies will need to collaborate in a very different fashion. And this means also a different mindset, because the way companies are organized is also command and control, right? Supply versus and what I see is Lean Digital also as an umbrella for not only moving the company from product or services to be a platform business, but also to start collaborating with other companies or entities in an ecosystem fashion. I think it's powerful, and this is where this center will take the industry and the markets, and driven by the consumer. The consumer wants very integrated and flawless experience, and that's is cross industry, is cross company at the end of the day.
Thank you, Cesar. Another one, Mary Santana. Nice to meet you, Cesar. I'm also Brazilian, living in Canada. My 2KM master was in Unicamp, so a colleague of you guys. I work for the government in Canada, and I would like to have some more ideas on how to work on leadership style redesign in the public sector. Any ideas?
It's a hard one. Once, a few years ago, I was driving with Jim Womack from São Paulo to Campinas, and I did the same question. Can we apply the Lean in thinking in the public sector? Because it's clearly there is a need. And Jim said, no way. There is no way, because it's about change, it's about transformation, and the public sector is not willing to do that. But I would like to hear John Shook experience or thoughts on applying. Of course, there is some interest case, but it's I feel just as small tentatives like Iran.
You have to get it, to give them this is Canada we're talking about. It's not Brazil or the US. It's like way more advanced. Maybe you have a
More
chance.
chances.
Mary.
No, what are your thoughts?
John,
Oh,
what's your point of view?
U.S. government, there's no more command and control at all. That's completely gone. I did two quick thoughts. One is, when we say public sector and government, I do think it's worth distinguishing between the purely political environment, being a politician getting elected, and then the public servants that are doing services forever, ongoing in a continuous way. Very different worlds, right? There's an intersection between them that is often awkward, but and I can't really speak to the political world, and every country is so different, and it's maybe crazy right now. But on this other side, which maybe is what you're speaking to, our experience is that people who spend their entire life are working within processes, and their life is better when they have a process that actually is designed in a robust way that you can execute, using the term that Bruno was talking about earlier. So there isn't a natural appeal of applying, I'm just going to talk now traditionally about lean redesign of work, and then also these new leadership behaviors that we're talking about. And what I'm interested in exploring further is what we discussed a few moments ago, which is the possible utilization of these digital tools to maybe force some of the change in leadership that we've all been wishing for and trying to encourage for a very, very long time. As things become more transparent, which can happen in a digital environment, then old command and control behavior, where we're making it clear that in our true north definitions, we want to be closely connected with customer need. And in the public sector, the customer need is the citizens. What do people really need? Again, don't just ask people what they want, find out what they really need, and then design a process in a operator-friendly process that can provide that. And then the leadership behaviors, if we make what's happening in terms of decision-making transparent, using digital tools, perhaps that can be a forcing mechanism to help us achieve the leadership changes we've all been wanting for a very long time. I'll stop there, I guess, for now. It's a great question.
Good. Thank you both. Mark Reich, on one frontline work of digital is coding. Have you applied process improvement to coding? Maybe John, you get that first.
Me, I don't know coding. I think I understand where the question is coming from, because we like to think of what the work is, right? When thinking about making any kind of improvement, and until we change the work, everything else is just kind of talk. And so we're working on coding. How can we code in a robust way? Right. So again, I'll really toss the question back over to Bruno and to Cesar.
No, there's the coding part. It's usually we run in 2-week sprints, what we call, and there's a specific PDCA for the coding part, and there's in the end of every cycle, there's what we call a retrospective meeting, where people sit back and analyze the data, how we perform, quality, productivity, and have a discussion on what can we do the next sprint that to incorporate improvements, right, and commit to those improvements and retooling. There's a very institutionalized way to do this on coding. But quite frankly, Mark, the biggest opportunity for improvement is not the life of developers. It's the life of everybody else that's surrounding the developers. It's improving the process of management. It's like if you ever had read a Dilbert cartoon, a Dilbert strip, that's what we're talking about. That's the pointy hairy boss. That's what they have to take away from Dilbert's life. That's the point. That's the process that needs to be redesigned. It's the poor developer, they're doing well.
In terms of code, I will add that I think there's a revolution inside the digital revolution. And by now, the name is DevOps. I think DevOps is a huge change in the way the stream of producing code changed. And really, everything else is just possible because we have this revolution inside the revolution. So I think the practice and we are just in the beginning. I think is gonna change a lot in the next in the years to follow. But I think if we can attach a name to a new way of coding, it's DevOps, and it's changing everything in terms of possibilities.
And once everything will be code, right? It will change really everything, right? The revolution inside the revolution. Fernando Pajares, what are the difficulties encountered or challenges when applying digital lean in companies in Brazil or Latin America compared to US and or Europe? Who gets that?
I think I can start. Bruno can add. I think it's less about country. It's more about the kind of organization. If it's a global, multinational CPG, it's radically different from financial service, local, or a retailer, or insurance company, or what else? So I think it's more about the animal than the country, or because normally these companies are operating in several countries and cultures. So, but I think it's when you go from industry to industry, and depends on the size and the complexity of the organization. I think the same concept apply from education to retailer, but I think, of course, there's a lot of nuances we need to cope with. Bruno, would you add?
No, I think that you nailed it. Like there's a big thing in the market. Digital transformation will change everything, but it's not like that. Like the digital, it's the relevance of digital changes dramatically depending on industry, right? So from media right? If you look at what digital did with media like 20 years ago already, it's completely different from mining in oil and gas, right? So it's just very different. How critical it is, and that defines, you know, the behavior across the industry. It's less about regional boundaries.
Good. Charles Baranesh here has a very good question. I recall some years ago that I was in an event and Singularity University, and there was a big presentation and a big slide with just a question: what if the problem is you? Right. So Charles' question is: senior leaders, especially in mature companies, tend to be the impediment. Are there any best practice you can share to overcome that?
There are. I think we shared in the presentation. I'll just recall. Like, I think we have to stop. Like, I think the lean community is very passionate about lean, right? We are very passionate about lean. It totally saved our lives and created a path for us. But we learned not to lead with the practice. And I think it's hard, but that's what, don't lead with the practice, lead with the impact and deliver the impact. The behaviors and the culture will change as a byproduct of impact. That's what we try to find. And you know, in every organization, we will find a couple of people that are open to work in a different way. Right? So that's what I will encourage you to do. Find, you know, this one or two partners that are open to do things differently, because it's you cannot convince anyone to do things differently if they don't think there's a problem. They will not be open to the solution. So find a partner, plan to, you know, have to create impact, to deliver business results, very, you know, the shortest that you can, and then you're going to see things, you know, attentions and people convert,
budgets and
yeah.
So Bob,
yes,
to that question. So this was at the Singularity University. And in fact, during this conversation, I thought about the whole singularity concept as well. But the question was, what if the problem is you? I think that meant all of us, not just senior leaders being the impediment. Now I think there's something important there, that whoever we are, wherever we are the impediment. We're the opportunity, we're the impediment. One thing I've experienced now, as doing this for a number of decades, is that everyone always looks to the other level. Those of us in the middle of the organization, yeah, the impediment. You know, if I was the senior leader, right, it's okay. You talk to senior leaders, and you know, if I had the right people, or as a friend of mine at McKinsey, of all places, mentioned to me a couple of years ago, he works with boards of directors and stuff. As he pointed out, everyone has a boss. We talk a lot about the chief executive, the CEO. CEOs have a boss.
Right. The board, the stakeholders.
Exactly. So looking elsewhere and how they're the impediment. I think that question that you raised was directed towards you, towards me, if I'm sitting there. So what can I do to change, you know, my work, and then the work which will influence the people around me? And then strategically, like Bruno said, you find a buddy, you find a partner, and so you try to build change out from there. Of course, it's great if the perfect, you know, senior leader comes in who's not an impediment but leads the way. But we can't wait on that to happen. I think the question as posed at the Singularity University is a very interesting one, and maybe relates to today. And in fact, Cesar, Bruno, you guys, you chose as the theme today, you really wanted to focus on the impact of this on us, on you, right? And so I think that kind of reflects this idea. What do we each? How can we each embrace this as a way to bring about greater change?
Thank you, John. Thank you. You see how I have always given the honor for John to give a quick answer for us. Crosby Solorzano has a great question. It's lean, agile, lean digital. What is the right?
I think it's a good question to make a disclaimer, as we, of course, we have a very strong point of view on these matters, but I think we need to be humble in the sense that we are learning. Everyone is learning about this how to connect all these concept tools and we decided to bet on this lean digital frame of mind, I would say, or umbrella. But there is a lot of discussions, and the terminology is always changing. So I see lean agile and lean digital as the same thing. But I see that in a broader sense, digital or agile needs lean desperately. Otherwise, I think it's the impact will not happen, will not be sustainable. I think the vocabulary or the taxonomy to discuss this change or the impact we want is depends on combining all the vocabulary from agile, from digital, with the frame of mind of lean. So, and there is no right recipe. It's just learn by doing, experiment. There's different contexts. I think of course, there are commonalities, and I think it's about learning. It's about be open-minded and humble to learning and unlearn what you learned before. So.
Good. We have a few minutes to go, so let's try to answer a few more questions quickly. Ikena Okoro, what is your experience on how automation tools, like example, RPA, MS Automate, affect lean in service environments? Who gets that?
One of you guys.
Yeah, I can try it. We're not super experts in automation tools. Our experience reside mostly on the experience outside the doors of a company. Right? So it's which is actually our expertise. It's more valuable, like all those tools that we mentioned, experimentation and continuous customer values discovery. That those are where we actually specialize ourselves. We're not very much involved in how to automate internal process, right? So what you use with robotic process automation and those tools, right? So, but how it can affect lean? Maybe John has a better answer to that than we have.
Cesar, you wanted to add? It sounded like.
I could say that it's. I think we're going to see a growing number of technologies, possibilities, and that's the mass tech I mentioned. If you get RPA or MS Automate and you start to think it's as a silver bullet of your inefficiency, it's the wrong way. I think lean can affect this, not the opposite. Lean can put some discipline, where and why. So the A3 thing, so before, do the left side of your A3 before applying any tools or technology. So understanding the context, the gaps, what problem we're trying to solve. And then there's this amazing set of technology possibilities to your hypothesis, to their countermeasure. I think it's the way lean would play is putting discipline and reasoning on where and how and why to apply the always growing number of technology possibilities.
If I could add, just a little bit there.
Go.
Yes, so automation or what have you, to the extent that it's just a how, then bring it on. You know, as long as we focus, as Bruno and Cesar have told us over and over the last hour and a half, don't get too hung up on the how, the practice itself. Always keep in mind the outcome, what it is you're trying to achieve, and then you bring in the any technology, automation, accordingly. Now, in the physical automation world, we've seen this play out over the last several decades. Companies want to automate out their people problems. And maybe, I don't know where AI may take us one day in the future. Maybe none of us need to work anymore and we're all just doing whatever we want. I can't speak to that. But today, humans are at the center, deciding what we want to achieve, how we can best serve our customers. And this was my point of bringing in that notion of Jidoka in 2020 that I started with. Recognize that as long as humans are in the center of things and doing real work, we want them to own the quality outcome of that work. Then they can bring in tools accordingly. So we need to make sure when we bring in any of these tools you're talking about, that they're supporting the people doing the work so they can do the work better. And I'd say in a way that is more fulfilling to them as they do the work as well. So it's very important, I think, it kind of sounds to me like automation in the office is going down a similar path to what automation in the factories did years ago. I mean, even Elon Musk at Tesla, he thought he could automate, and have the lights out factory a couple of years ago. It was a total disaster. GM has tried it repeatedly over the last 3 decades. And again, it may happen one day. So it's fine that people keep trying and pushing the envelope. But as long as we have humans there, let's rely on humans to bring the creativity and that sense of ownership, and let's design processes accordingly, and let's bring technology to support them. It's easy before you know it to have that reversed. So a person is working for the machine. So this is the problem that the Toyota family was trying to answer over 100 years ago, which is not to have people working for a machine. At that time, it was just an automatic loom, but it's the same idea. How can people do what is appropriate for human beings?
Perfect. We're heading towards the end of this conversation, which has been great, and we have a few questions, but I will do the following. I have one tweet question for Bruno and Cesar, and then I will invite Shuk to wrap up our gathering here today. So the quick questions is one phrase, one tweet. Bruno, any relationship between the map and your background and time of uncertainty? We need to see the world differently. That's from Juan Vasquez. One tweet.
Yeah, that's it. The world is not upside down. If you think the world is just south, doesn't mean down. It's just a different way to look at the world. It's just a reminder for myself I'm a big fan of Zen and the beginner's mindset. So it's just a reminder to look at things different all the time.
Good. The tweet for you, Cesar. What is a lean professional? From Clinton Day.
Lean professional.
One tweet.
If we believe there's a lean professional, I think it's someone that focus on people development, not on technology, not on process. Is focused on improve people around him or her. This is a lean professional, in my perspective.
Perfect. With that said, I would like to thank all the people that made questions. Some are still there, but sorry, we are running out of time. And I would invite John to wrap up this gathering, the learnings and the provocations that we got here today.
Oh, goodness. Well, my objective is always to learn with these things. And today with this whole conversation, this is easy for me. It's all continues to be something that's new. And I share some of the questions that were asked. Exactly how we use terminology. We talk lean digital industry 4.0. Remember, this term lean, it's just a made up thing. I'm a real fan of that. There's a quote by a statistician named George Box. I'm sure you've heard the quote. All models are wrong. Some are useful. And so to what extent are these things useful? The word lean means the things we've talked, focusing on value for the customer, designing work so people can do it effectively every time in a way that they're engaged in a human way, developing capability, putting in management systems with the leadership behaviors to make all that work, being mindful of our mindsets, and for accepting and learning to accept things, such as we learned today about uncertainty. I don't know, people say that things are change is happening faster. There's more uncertainty. I think Socrates said that a long time ago. And I suppose it is increasing exponentially. And so we can no longer ignore it. I think this concept that we heard about, that instead of thinking of time, think of the degree of uncertainty, is fascinating and probably very useful in terms of focusing on work and making the plans that we want to make, that we need to make. So lean professional is one that I think is always focused on learning, It's on learning this set of ways of thinking, these values, and how to improve work so that we can all make things better for ourselves, for our companies, and for our customers. I guess I'll stop there, Bob, and say thank you to Bob, Bruno, Cesar, for sharing your wisdom. I would encourage people again to download this book. And I'm not sure how, but we'll somehow make available this recording of this will be available. And also we can find ways to address some of the questions that we didn't get to, if any of you would like that. And I want to also here at the end just invite people to join next week also. Here is the sessions. It is in fact through leading. So this whole role of leadership again is going to be front and center all next week. And the crisis that we've all been going through elevates the meaning of it, and it means it is just something we cannot ignore. And I'd love to go through these names and the people and introduce them. They're all wonderful people, except the one there, the old one kind of off to the right, who will share the things that they've been doing over these recent months. So I hope to see some of you next Monday. I think we're going to start, 2 of the sessions will be on Monday, 2 on Tuesday. Then we'll all join up together for panel discussion on Thursday with some homework in between. So hopefully you'll be able to join and also do the homework. Thank you for joining now. Thank you again, my CI&T friends. Obrigado.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Obrigado. Thank you everyone that joined. Thank you.